She has also worked across a diverse range of industries, including engineering, construction, mining, utilities, building, manufacturing, science and technologies. Oh, this is starting to sound like Jim Bett's job description. Yeah. And community services. In 2019, she accepted a position on the National Board of Lean Construction Australia and New Zealand, the Australian and New Zealand branch of the Global Lean Construction Institute. Christina is passionate about people, culture and leadership and the continuous improvement that is possible within them. Welcome, Christina.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Can I just get a bit of a gauge? Who would have heard of lean construction before? It's about 1/10 of the room. That's approximately the feedback I usually get. Who would have heard of operational excellence? About the same amount of people. So what I thought for the presentation today is that I give you, the title is what is lean construction, why should you care? So I thought I'd kick it off with why should you care? Why is it important that we actually do change how we're doing things these days? Because last time, I promise, hands up for who feels that we're actually busier than we've ever been. That's about half the room. So, that's the feedback I get on all the projects and the organizations I work with at the moment. And it's not a sustainable way of being. And as we go through the presentation, that's going to become clear. What are some of the statistics around that? So why should you care? The first reason is that construction is the third largest industry that we have in Australia, and it's really important the contribution that construction makes to not only the employment market but also the GDP. And every dollar you spend in construction comes back ×3 to the economy. So it's really important that this is an industry we look at with regard to what can we do better with less. Some of the key challenges that we're facing at the moment, and you would have experienced one or the other, all of them, is that we actually have worsening productivity. And that has been a trend that's been going on for the last 30 years. So it's something of 40 years even at this point. So it's really something that we need to address and have a look at. And Rebecca talked about waste and some of the waste that we have across the industry, and it's really high time that we look at it and address how we're dealing with it. We have worsening financial outcomes across the projects that we're doing. There is this wave, boom and bust investment cycle where it's either, like right now, frantically busy, or it's the other way around, and there's just not enough work to go around. So that doesn't lend itself to really having sustainable improvements across an industry. The rise of the mega projects, and Piers has mentioned a couple that are going on at the moment. And the mega projects, and I have some statistics on that as well a bit later on, are actually a lot worse than smaller projects. So how do we address that? The diversity across our sector is absolutely woeful. So it's actually great to see quite a number of women in the audience here today, but the overall number is actually 12%. So, there's a massive talent pool we're really not tapping into. And then the last box I find is really the worst one, and it's around mental health. I don't know whether you knew that you're 6 times more likely to die of suicide in our industry than of a workplace accident. And by the way, we're still the industry that kills the most people. So on top of that. So that is a trend that we really got to turn around and get better at. So I spoke about that productivity gap and where we're at the moment. So since 2014, if you look at these lines, we've had a decline of 16.5%. So, in 2014, we had a bit of a jump up due to the resources boom, and then it dwindled back. And what that means is that the current gap between our industry and other industry is 33.6%. That's the gap. Just to give you an indication of what that means, for New South Wales alone in 2021, that is $15.3 billion in lost opportunity. That's what that 33.6% means. $15.3 billion. There's massive opportunity to tap into and do more with less. The other statistic I came across was that there was a survey done with Generation Z. Mark asked you earlier to please, if you have a child that's finishing school at the moment, to consider going into the industry. That survey found that less than a third would even consider it. So it's not really an attractive industry at the moment, and we're also losing talent by the minute. I thought I'd dig something out that also gives a bit of an indication where rail sits in that space. So this is a statistic across those mega projects that we talked about. And if you're looking at how many of those projects are over time and over budget, the mega projects, it's pretty much all of them globally. And then on the right-hand side, that study looked at 167 road projects, 58 rail projects, and 33 in the bridge and tunnel space. And rail is actually the worst offender, so 44.7%. That's the inaccuracy of construction cost estimates and then cost overruns in that space. So we're actually the industry that across infrastructure performs the worst there. Bit of an insight where some of that time is wasted. And Rebecca mentioned those wastes across our sector, and the worst one by a long shot is actually waiting. And I know it doesn't feel like that at the moment, because nobody seems to be waiting for anything, but that is actually the worst culprit, and that's what eats into the productivity rates the most. Now, if you look at that chart, we have 11.5 hours per week per person on any one project. That's being wasted by looking for data and information, just digging for it. Just see some heads nodding, it's kind of, yeah, familiar sight. Collaboration and the lack of it, 3.5 hours in conflict resolution, that, is being wasted. And then dealing with mistakes and rework is also something that you guys mentioned. That's 3.2 hours. So that's those 11.5 hours each person on every project per week. Just have a think about how many people do you have on your project, and what does that mean in total numbers. I promise it gets better. I just wanted to get an appreciation of why you should care and why we really need to address it. So these are the most recent numbers from Infrastructure Australia of what we're looking at, starting from last year leading up to 2025 with regard to, the shortage in people that we're going to be experiencing. And, it's a grim picture. Plus with the survey that young people don't find our industry attractive, and we're losing talent. It's just not a great outlook, and we really got to respond to how do we fix this. So that's the end of the depressing part of the presentation. So just having a picture of what our current state of being is, and why we need to do something, and we need to do something soon. And there's all kinds of reports coming out at the moment that are addressing it from every single angle, and I think that's also needed. There is not one size is going to fit all, and we have the magic bullet. And lean construction is something that I've seen work really, really well, and I'll go through for what reasons and with what kind of outcomes. But it's it needs to be in combination with a whole heap of other things that we've heard already this morning. It is about working together more collaboratively, really making sure that we're turning it into a sustainable industry, and just finally doing things differently. So lean construction is a delivery process that uses lean methodologies and operational excellence methodologies to minimize that waste that we talked about. But it also has a 50% emphasis on really doing the right thing by the customer and having that customer focus. And I've seen that on projects again and again, that if you really focus on the right things, you tend to get the better outcomes. So that's what Lean is really focusing on. It's a very collaborative environment, and that's not just on the project, that's with client organizations, that's with supply chain, that's with any other partners that you have on those projects. It's a very much a holistic approach. So it doesn't just stop at the project team, it goes way beyond that. So it really aims at those productivity gains, which will lead to better profits, as much as innovation. And we've heard that at the moment we just don't have the time for it, and it's really difficult to do. In a past life, I was an innovation manager for Bosch Electronics, and so very aware of what some of the obstacles are, but also what the opportunities are, and what the great add-ons to an industry these innovations can bring. And so Lean Construction really enables people to actually have the headspace for that. And it continuously asks for it as well, because it is a process that needs to be ongoing to actually work. You can't just do an innovation workshop once a year and that is going to fix all the problems. It needs to be an ongoing process. Within Lean Construction, we also talk about commitments and accountability a lot. And as we go through some of the tools, that hopefully gets a bit clearer what that means in that space. It's also about all stakeholders aligning on one goal and making sure that we're all knowing which direction we're going into. So just, again, why should you care? These are the benefits that Lean Construction over the past 30 years has brought about. So it's shorter construction times, better safety and reduced risks, the minimization of that waste we've talked about, actually better quality outcomes, a lot less rework. There's less firefighting, and I don't know whether you had a chance to read the abstract. It's very much, where do you want to be? Apocalypse now, with your hair on fire on the Dulong Bridge, or 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, happy hour in the pub. So it's really aiming at that and addressing some of the issues that we're having at the moment with people just really being burned out. The smoother flow. So as you look at Lean, flow is a very important thing, so avoiding the stop, start. The reduced operating cost, the decreased stress for everybody involved, and actually increased job satisfaction, therefore staff retention. So that's actually measurable data that Lean Construction can bring about. Some of the key principles. So it's really about adding value. And in our industry, when we're looking at value, it's very often a focus on money. Would that be a fair comment? When we're talking about value, it's the monetary value that we're looking at. And I think we need to cast that net a lot wider and start looking at what are some of the other value adds that we want to create. It's, every single time I approach a new project manager and I want to know something about the project we're going to be working on together, the first thing they tell me is what it's worth. It's the dollar value. You guys are creating phenomenal infrastructure, and I'd be far more interested in knowing what is it going to do for the community it's in, what is it going to do for the state, for Australia, for infrastructure, for transport. What are those things? What is it going to do? But also, what is it going to do for the people on the project? What value add are they going to get out of it? And how is the company going to grow because of that? So really just, bigger picture thinking when we're looking at projects. What that means is that we need leadership actually driving that. We need leadership really taking the accountability and wanting to do things differently and wanting to do things better with less. It's about true collaboration, and I know that collaboration has been a word over the past decade that has been used a lot, and it means different things to different people. But when we talk about it, we have the assumption that everybody knows exactly what we mean and what that's going to look like and how we're going to get there. And what I'm experiencing out on projects is that until you've actually really defined it and you're constantly working on what collaboration means, how you implement it and how you maintain it, it's just not going to fly. It doesn't happen by itself. You got to work on it like everything else. And then you got to, put some effort in and actually keep it running. And then that optimized workflow, which is really on the basis of Lean, where you really define and develop something that very smoothly runs through a project. Can I just check, who's been on a project as of late that ran really smoothly? Yep, not a single hand. So, that's what Lean is at its core, attempting to achieve that you really have that flow throughout a project with great leadership and fantastic collaboration across the whole value chain. In order to get there, it's really important to invest in planning. And I know that we believe we're really good at planning, and we have those phenomenal tools that we're using for planning, and it looks very impressive. Who's actually seen a project stick to a plan as of late? Yeah, again, not a single hand. That's the average that I get. So how do you actually get back to that? And what does that look like to actually have a plan that's reliable and that people really feel they can believe in? Using the right processes and making sure that they support that value chain. And that's different for every project. But at the end of the day, investing in that upfront is really, really important. I don't know what you've heard about Crossrail in London. Since we started the system integration, it has gotten a really bad rep. But up until this point, and that's unfortunately what people don't talk about anymore, is that was a sensational civil project that was on time and on budget. And just to give you some insight into what on budget means, is at the front end they asked for a longer planning period. And we're talking 6 months. So they planned this out 6 months longer, handed £1 billion of the budget back, and nailed that new budget on time. So investing in planning doesn't mean we'll get an additional planner and he'll sit there 3 days a week. No. It's, seriously investing in planning and getting that right. And then the second half to that is then sticking to a plan. I've also worked with projects where the plan was actually great, but nobody stuck to it. And that leads to the same outcomes with those statistics we looked at the front end of this presentation. It's about developing our people as much as our partners. And with the people side, we're only half bad, but with the partners, we're really bad. And if you look at the example, so Highways England, driven by the global financial crisis, actually implemented lean construction. And one of the mandatory requirements was, you shall stick with your supply chain for a really long time and you shall develop them. And that led to a 30% budget saving across the first 5 years. Not going to dwell on this a whole lot, but there is a whole heap of key practices and techniques out there. And if you're interested, go to the Lean Construction ANZ website. We are a not-for-profit organization that looks after lean construction across Australia and New Zealand. And there's all kinds of information you can find there. The one tool I briefly wanted to touch on is something that is very dear to my heart and is called the Last Planner System. Has anybody heard of the Last Planner System? Yay! 2 people in the back, excellent. It's actually the only lean tool that was specifically designed for construction. Everything else comes from the manufacturing space. This is the one tool that was specifically designed for construction and leads to phenomenal outcomes. Because, I asked you earlier which of the projects you've been part of has been on track. One of the reasons is that we're sitting at 54% against any one plan in our industry today. So of 100% activities that are being planned for that week, we're getting to 54. So if you're on a project that gets to 60, 70, there's another project out there that does a lot worse. But that's what we're looking at. And 80% of your safety, environmental, and quality incidents happen during unplanned activities. So, 46% are actually exposed to that, plus the productivity loss that we have there. So just quickly to finish it off, what are some of the outcomes that can be achieved with the Last Planner? Gross margin, labor productivity, safety, as much as plan reliability. And our current poster child has achieved 41% savings against the plan, months. It's months of time saving. There's a link on that slide, and the slides are going to get shared. Do yourself a favor and watch that video. It's a 20-minute video, so it didn't fit into Otherwise, it would have been just the video from me today. But it's a really good video where a company compares really apples with apples. So Baker Concrete, a construction company in the States, built 2 identical facilities at pretty much the same time for the same client with, for the second one, bottom of the barrel team. And the outcomes they achieved was this. And their safety stats were really good to begin with. And that was just the last plan on something called 5S. So watch the video. It's because we always get well, how do you prove that? Every project is different. That one wasn't. It was identical. And this is my last slide. Where would you rather be? It's, apocalypse now with your hair on fire on the Dulong Bridge, or 5 o'clock today, happy hour in the pub. Thank you so much for caring. And if you want any additional information, as I said, go to the Lean Construction ANZ website, or have a conversation with me in a break. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.